Hello, everybody. This piece of your diabetes care could literally save your life. Listen in to find out what it is. And I answer a diabetes dilemma question today about tackling those after meal blood sugar levels. Let's get started.
Welcome to Type 2 and You with Meg, a diabetes podcast with the tools and guidance you need for your best life with type 2 diabetes. Your host, Megan Munoz, is a Dartmouth-trained health coach and master-prepared certified diabetes educator. She's helped thousands of people turn their diabetes fears, questions, and concerns into hope, confidence, and action. Ready to support your type 2 journey? Here's Meg.
Putting yourself in someone else's shoes or trying to imagine what things might be like from their perspective is called empathy. And it sounds like something that might be nice to have in a medical provider. But the reality is, having someone that's empathetic managing your care can actually save your life. There was a study that was just released last year that was kind of mind-blowing, in my opinion, because they looked at people that were newly diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And these people rated their medical provider on the level of empathy they felt they received. So they would have a provider that was not very empathetic at all, or a provider that was highly empathetic. And 10 years after these people filled out this survey, they looked to see how many of that group had died of a heart-related event. And do you know what they found? The people that had medical providers who were rated at the highest level of empathy had a 40 to 50% lower risk of dying from a heart-related event. 40 to 50% is an insane number. So, when we talk about empathy, it's a big deal. It's a powerful tool that's really critical in your health. There's other studies that show if you have an empathetic provider, you're more likely to have healthy blood sugars and healthy cholesterol levels, and you're less likely to have diabetes complications like DKA and HHS. Those are really severe illnesses that you can get when your blood sugars are extremely high. Let me give you an example of something that would commonly happen in my experience. I'll give you both sides of it, how I would typically respond, because I believe empathy is really a critical way of helping someone manage their diabetes versus a response from someone in the medical world who may not be empathetic. So imagine a gentleman who has a meter and his battery's dead. He comes in to see me and I have no data or no information from his meter for the past 2 weeks. A healthcare provider who is not empathetic or has lower levels of empathy may not take the time to understand why this person was not able to get their meter battery replaced, and may simply write non-compliant in their chart, which I interpret as this person isn't doing what I say they should be doing and they really don't care about themselves. When I look at this gentleman, I want to know, what are the barriers to getting that meter working again? And in this case, it turns out there's a lot of them. He doesn't have his own transportation, so rides the bus everywhere he goes. He also has trouble getting around, so walking to and from a bus stop from a store or from his home or from the clinic is asking a lot, especially in snowy weather like we have here during the winter. There's ice on the streets. Sometimes the sidewalks aren't clean. We also have to consider that this gentleman doesn't have a lot of cash flow. So to come up with the money to pay for a battery for a meter is a big stretch for him. So in this particular case, something as simple as having a vehicle and some cash would make getting a battery not that big of a deal. But when you think about all these pieces that this gentleman has to go through just to replace the battery in his meter, and heaven forbid he goes to the store and they don't have that size of battery there, and he has to go to a different one, you could see how easily this task could turn into something that's quite daunting or overwhelming and something that could easily get delayed. So that's empathy. That's empathy in a nutshell. What must it be like to be in this person's shoes and have this certain problem, situation, scenario, and what must it be like to have to respond with the resources available? And that's where I think sometimes we definitely fall short when it comes to people with diabetes, like yourselves, because we tend to write people off very quickly if they're struggling with their weight, if they're struggling with their blood sugars, if they're struggling with getting to routine medical appointments, any of those things. It's very easy to just say, well, they just don't care. And the reality is almost no one doesn't care about their health or about themselves. There's just a heck of a lot of things in the way sometimes that make it tough. So empathy, incredibly important to have someone that's involved in your care that has a high level of empathy. You're probably wondering, what does empathy look like? How do I know if I have a provider who's empathetic? And I'll talk about it in Takeaway of the Day. First, let's move on to diabetes dilemmas.
Diabetes dilemmas, support and answers for your diabetes questions.
My diabetes dilemma question today comes from Miss J. And Miss J says, my uncontrolled diet is causing my glucose to go up. So let's explore this diabetes dilemma. First of all, we do have to consider that it's possible that you're overeating and that's what's causing the blood sugars to go up. It seems like this tends to happen more for people who are not eating 3 meals a day. And by the end of the day, you're usually super hungry and you tend to overeat, which is called binging. So that's one reason why somebody might struggle with overeating and causing their blood sugars to go up. On the flip side of that, there are a lot of people that I meet that feel they're overeating, when in reality they're undereating. Or they get really concerned about their blood sugars after their meal and think that they're overeating simply because the blood sugars are higher. And that's not the case all the time. I've met people who are barely eating anything and their blood sugars are still 200 or 300 after a meal. And that could be related to the progression of diabetes, meaning your body over time makes less insulin. And so you could eat the same meal 3 years into your diagnosis and 15 years into your diagnosis, and you're going to get different blood sugar results just because of the way your body changes over time with type 2 diabetes. And then there's a whole host of other factors that could lead to higher blood sugar levels that have nothing to do with food, medication doses, stress, sleep, activity levels, and so on. So here are a few tips for you, Miss J. Number 1, make sure you're getting all your meals and snacks in so that you don't end up getting super hungry by the end of the day. Number 2, evaluate what your meal's made of. A lot of times people will struggle with higher blood sugars if their meal is all carbohydrate and it doesn't have a balance of protein and fat and carb altogether. For example, for breakfast, let's pretend like you eat oatmeal and banana and berries. That's all carb. It's all healthy for you, but it's all carb. So you'll tend to see your blood sugars be more elevated after a meal like that versus having a piece of toast with peanut butter, an egg, and a banana. Number 3 is try to think outside the box. Are there other things going on in your life that make it difficult for your blood sugars to stay in a healthy range? Do you have higher levels of stress now? Are you getting enough sleep? Both of those things can really impact the signals that we get from our body on how hungry we are and how full we are. And they can also impact the blood sugar levels. And lastly, number 4 is consider that your body has changed. It's possible that your blood sugar levels have nothing to do with the food that you're eating. It could simply be because your diabetes has changed over time. This is a great opportunity to work with a dietitian in your area. So you could ask your physician for a referral for a registered dietitian, ideally one that has experience with diabetes or intuitive eating. And when you work with them, you'll really be able to gauge, okay, is it really that I'm overeating? Is it that I'm overeating because of some of these other factors that we talked about? Or is it that my body has just changed and I need something different to help me? Thank you, Miss J, for sending in that diabetes dilemma. If you're listening and you have a diabetes dilemma you'd like answered, make sure to reach out to me on the links in the podcast description. Let's move on to Takeaway of the Day.
Takeaway of the day, turning your information into action.
My takeaway of the day for you is going to be about how to find those signs of empathy in your provider. But before I go through those pieces, I just have to say, personally, I think empathy is one of the most powerful things that we can give people as a medical professional. And not only is it something that I think is important in my role as a medical professional, but it's also something I look for in a medical provider. I want to know that myself and my family are heard, they're respected, they're more than just a number to them. And that's a really important piece that I look for when it comes to medical care. But what does empathy look like? I'm going to use the questionnaire that was given to people in the study to determine whether their medical provider was empathetic or not. There's 10 things. One is that your provider makes you feel at ease. They're friendly, they're warm towards you, you feel respected. Number 2, they let you tell your story. You feel like you have time to describe what's going on in your own words, what's happening, what you need help with, and they're not interrupting you or cutting you off. Number 3, they listen. They're not looking at their notes. They're not typing on a computer. They don't have their back to you. They're really listening to what you're saying. Number 4 is being interested in you as a whole person. They want to know more about you than just your medical diagnosis. Number 5 is fully understanding your concerns. So if you express to them, I'm really worried about my blood sugar levels, or you tell them, listen, I'm on metformin and I'm having diarrhea all the time, and they completely disregard you, which I've had that happen to people before, that is a sign that they're not very empathetic. But if they listen to you, they communicate back to you and say, listen, it sounds like this is a struggle for you. It sounds like you're concerned about it. I think we should look into it further. I think we should come up with a different plan, whatever. Fully understanding your concerns is a big piece of empathy. Number 6, showing care and compassion. Number 7, and I think this one might be a tough one to find when it comes to diabetes, is being positive. Letting you know, like, listen, I know this has to be a struggle, but we're going to get through this. I'm going to be here to support you. And just that positive attitude, positive approach towards you. Number 8 is they explain things clearly. They fully answer your questions. They take time to make sure you're getting adequate information, and they're not being vague or dismissive of questions you might have. Number 9, helping you take control. Instead of lecturing you about what you should be doing, they talk to you about how you may explore different ways to improve your health. And number 10 is making a plan of action with you. Really, this number means you have a partnership, that you discuss things together and you make a decision and a plan together. So those are 10 signs of empathy. Empathy, not only is it important in your relationships with your medical providers, but it can literally save your life. Tune in next week. I'm super excited to bring you a pharmacist certified diabetes care and education specialist who's going to talk to us about safety around diabetes supplements. Herbal supplements are very common in the world of diabetes. Some estimates are that up to 50% of people use supplements in their diabetes care. But are there things that you need to know to stay safe? And what are things that you should consider if you use supplements or you're considering the use of supplements? So that's next week. And until then, don't forget, the number one thing you can do to manage your diabetes is bet on you.
Keep current on new episodes by subscribing to Type 2 and You with Meg. Be sure to share a link of today's episode to someone you know living with Type 2 diabetes. Want to learn more about today's topic or need answers to your diabetes dilemmas? Contact Megan by using the links in the podcast description or visiting her webpage, type2nu.org. This podcast is for informational purposes only and not intended as medical advice.